it's not talked about yet, but it'll soon come out that he was a CIA informant.
He was a CIA informant.
He wasn't a CIA. I think he's protecting a lot of other people. He's not protecting himself because there's nothing there, but he's protecting a lot of people. Because Trump's now saying it's a hoax, it's the case is like a hoax or something. I'm like, come on, you know it's not a hoax. He's been on the plane, many times. Mm-hmm. It's just he was never on the plane with the kids. I've seen the itineraries and I've interviewed all the victims. There's never been an instance where Trump was on a plane with these kids and a rape occurred. But that can't be said for Clinton, and it can't be said for others. While the Clintons were on the plane, while Bill Clinton was on the plane, there were rapes that occurred.
Donald Trump's house of cards is on the brink of collapse after an undercover journalist got another DOJ official to admit that the Trump administration is keeping big secrets in regard to Epstein. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. On September 8th, 2025, Glenn Prager was approached by what he believed was an ordinary traveler. Unbeknownst to him, she was an extraordinary citizen journalist. Noticing an FBI patch sewn into his bag, she began her investigation. But before we get into Glenn's revelations, let's do some background on the man. Glenn has been a senior investigator at the Department of Justice for 20 years, according to his LinkedIn, overseeing sensitive investigations involving major DOJ components, including FBI, DEA, Bureau of Prisons, U.S. Marshal Service, ATF, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. He was in charge of interviewing victims and investigating flight logs.
About this whole Epstein thing that's like going down.
So I worked on that case. I used to interview all the victims, and my picture was 20 to 30 victims, in Palm Beach that I was interviewing and dealing with and stuff like that. And then we would go ready to go to trial, and they would flip. Epstein would just pay them off, and they were just like these little kids. They pay off their family. They're all broke kids and poor families, and so you pay them off like anywhere from $150,000 to $500,000. Nothing in that guy's world.
So here, Glenn mentions interviewing 30 people in relation to Epstein's abuse. He's most likely referring to the 34 confirmed minors that came from compiled FBI reports. He goes on to detail how Epstein would flip witnesses by paying off families anywhere between $150,000 to $500,000. Epstein did spend 18 months in jail after pleading guilty to 2 charges in June of 2008. Those charges were the solicitation of prostitution and the solicitation of prostitution from a minor. 18 months does seem like a slap on the wrist for said charges, and there was a non-prosecution deal in play, which does come up later in the case and in this, this whole cover-up of Epstein in general. But Glenn was just about to go on to another reason as to why Epstein was able to avoid a hefty prison sentence.
I'll tell you this, because no, it's not talked about yet, but it'll soon come out that he was a CIA informant.
He was a CIA informant.
He wasn't a CIA. So DOJ was settling a case, and they were just letting him, do house arrest, and they minimized his arrest. Part of that is because all the victims kept on flipping, and they didn't have anyone to go to trial with. The more importantly part is they didn't want to go after him. He's a asset for the United States and Israel for the CIA. I just know that's what he was, and that's why he was protected so long for this. And people turned a blind eye about all this garbage that he was doing in the United States. He had a lot of secrets. More about Israeli stuff than anything else. I mean, he was doing stuff for Israel and the United States. He was, he's working for both.
This is a major turning point for anyone keeping up with the Epstein debacle. This is the first time we've gotten confirmation that Epstein was anything besides the billionaire financier and accountant to the stars that the mainstream media would push out. For years, conspiracy theorists tried to paint the picture that Epstein was in charge of a honeypot operation used to gain blackmail and thus control the world's elites on behalf of Israel and the US. And here, Glenn Prager seemingly confirms these theories. And in a sad attempt at covering this up, Mike Johnson, who was the leader of the House of Representatives, came out with a quote in which he said something along the lines that Donald Trump was an agent, an undercover informant to the FBI, trying to help them take down this filth that Jeffrey Epstein was doing, which to me just sounds like a load of malarkey.
This is a load of barnacles.
Glenn Prager goes on to give his reasons as to why he believes that the Epstein files were originally on the chopping block, as it were. He then gives some context which would vindicate Donald Trump in the eyes of his supporters, all while throwing a certain president under the bus.
They claim that that Trump's involved in the rapes and all that stuff, and he wasn't. I mean, I've seen the agendas, I've seen the itineraries, and I've interviewed all the victims. There's never been an instance where Trump was on a plane with these kids and a rape occurred. But that can't be said for Clinton, and it can't be said for others. I remember that it was being killed because I know Clintons were on there, and
The Clintons were on there.
100%. And while the Clintons were on the plane, while Bill Clinton was on the plane, there were rapes that occurred. And that's what I'm saying. Trump, although as many flights as there were and all that kind of stuff, and on the island and all that stuff, he was never there during a single alleged rape. But that Clinton for sure. And that's where the big cover-up was.
And that's where the big cover-up was, from the horse's mouth itself. Mr. Prager believes the Epstein list was killed in order to protect Bill Clinton, as he had a very public relationship with Epstein. According to visitor logs, Jeffrey Epstein visited Bill Clinton's White House 17 times between 1993 and 1995. The logs show that he was admitted 14 times on separate days, and on 3 occasions, twice within the same day. They also took a trip to Africa that lasted 9 days, visiting multiple countries, along with some other celebrities. So if we're looking at what Glenn Prager has said about Bill Clinton and the Democrats, it would make sense that they would want to bury the Epstein list to hide the fact that, a sitting president was best friends with one of the largest pederasts of all time. This story isn't going anywhere anytime soon, as no one expects the Epstein's files to be released in their entirety, but we will be keeping up with the story here on the channel. The next part of my series regarding Epstein, I'll probably take a look at his non-prosecution agreement back in 2008, 2009, and everything that went into that, and how exactly his confinement went, because I think that's a pretty interesting story that everyone ought to know. I just want to thank the O'Keefe Media Group, is where you saw all the footage, and they're the ones who hit the ground running and had that citizen journalist go out there and press Glenn Prager for all of this information. In all reality, she didn't really press him. She posed as a regular traveler, and he, being encountered with a young lady, was just so willful and willing to, dispense all of this information. They even went on an hour and 45-minute dinner afterwards, in which she was able to acquire more information from him. Since then, the Department of Justice had issued a statement saying that, everything was baseless, that she didn't properly identify herself. So, he was just speaking based on his own opinions, not based on the findings that he found at his workplace, which I find to be like just not the case. Like a guy like that is going to be telling the truth when he's brought to someone like a journalist, like just randomly. He's not going to be having his guard up. He's not going to be expecting that this person is out to get him. So I believe he actually was telling the truth. That's just them trying to cover their own backsides there. But I do want to thank the O'Keefe Media Group for that compelling put together of that video. Thank you so much for tuning into the video, and I'll catch you guys next time.